Hey folks, welcome back to Chris Wyatt Reports. This is Chris in Central Pennsylvania with a very special discussion today. This is my friend Gary Reihart. Gary did something quite interesting back in 1963. Now I realize that almost all of my audience wasn't born yet, but Gary was there and he knows about it. So you may recall the JFK files have been released, declassified this week, and a lot of people are excited about it. Gary actually purchased the same rifle that Lee Harvey Oswald used, and he purchased it right afterwards from the same place. We're going to talk about that today. So Gary, how you doing today?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
So this rifle right here, that looks very familiar. Why would I recognize that rifle?
Because that's the rifle that was used, a rifle like that, to assassinate President Kennedy.
The exact same model.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So how did you come by this rifle?
Several days after the assassination, I was reading a American Rifleman magazine, and I came across an ad for that same rifle, and I had heard on the news that Lee Oswald had purchased his rifle at Klein's Sporting Goods store, so I don't know why it compelled me to do it, but I immediately filled out the coupon and sent it in, and in a few days I had the rifle that was alike to the one that Oswald used. Well,
it turns out it's the exact same model because these were surplus World War II Italian rifles that were being sold through a third party into New York for the Italians to get rid of them after the war, and collectors were buying them in the States. And as I understand it, Oswald wanted the long rifle, but they didn't have it in stock because they'd run out. And this is a short rifle, so it's a shorter one than most of the ones you actually find.
Yes, this is the Grand, and that's the one that he received, yes.
It's an Italian rifle.
Yes, it's an Italian 6.5 Carcano, and when they sold those at Klein's Sporting Goods stores, they had a whole barrel full of them. And of course, that's how the sporting goods stores made a lot of money. After the war, they would take in weapons and things like that, war memorabilia, and then they would place it up for sale. And this just happened to be something that Oswald decided to purchase to do his dastardly deed.
And as I understand, he actually used the rifle that he had to try to assassinate General Walker a few days or sometime before this, and he hit the window frame or something like that and missed and ran and hit.
Yes, that's correct. There wasn't very much discussion about that after the assassination. They did mention it, but he did fire General Walker's house, and that's what happened. Yeah.
Wow. So Gary has the magazine from 1963, and he's handling it like you picked it up in the store today. I would be handling that with kid gloves for something that's old. That magazine is older than I am. Of course, Gary's a little older than I am too. But we'll leave it at that.
That's true.
But that's amazing. Can I see that?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So here's the advert, and as I recall, it was one of these, third one down, right? This one here.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
That's the one right there. Mm-hmm. And ladies and gentlemen, Gary got this for the princely something with the scope.
No,
I didn't get the scope later. Okay.
Didn't get the scope.
All right. Well, if he had gotten it with the scope, you would have paid the princely sum of $19.95.
Yes.
But that in today's dollars, and inflation is $200. Where can you get a rifle for $200 today?
That's true.
You just can't. But folks, it's just amazing. This is the actual advert that inspired Gary to go buy the same rifle that Lee Harvey Oswald used to assassinate President Kennedy. Yeah. Or at least that's what we're told for you conspiracy theorists, the grassy knoll and all your other theories. But that's amazing. So Gary, you went out and got this. This was in November, I think he wasn't, or something like that?
November of 63.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And so I guess in some ways it was kind of an early Christmas present for you getting yourself that rifle.
Yeah. Well, I didn't really, I don't even know why I bought it, other than the fact that it seemed to me it would be something that a person would want to keep. It just was that important. I was so distraught over Kennedy's assassination, and so I did purchase it, and I've had it ever since. I've had two Marine gunnery sergeants fire the thing to determine how accurate it was, and very interesting, the things that the Warren Commission reported and what we found.
Were they similar?
No.
Oh, okay. No. We'll get into that in a second, but hang on. We'll get to the Warren Commission and what was different. But I do want to mention this. There are events that occur in people's lives, not personal events, but noteworthy events, newsworthy events that stick with you forever. So in my lifetime, the three events that will always be seared in my memory is when my mother told me Elvis Presley died. but that's because I knew Elvis personally. I used to run around Graceland when I was a little kid. So he was such a nice man. So that's seared in my memory when that happened. That was when I was in Ohio. And then the second one is when the Challenger blew up. Just the total shock of watching that thing blow up in 1986. And the third event like that is 9/11. In your lifetime, there were a couple events in the 1960s in particular. The assassination of President Kennedy, the assassination of Martin Luther King, the assassination of Bobby Kennedy. Those three events are probably seared in your mind. I don't know if the Tet Offensive is seared in your mind, but that was a big event too. So what was that like? I mean, I wasn't around in 1963, and many of you were not either. Because hearing parents and grandparents talk about that, people never forget it. And a lot of people that didn't like Kennedy when he was assassinated suddenly started to like him because of what happened. But for you, what was that like when Kennedy?
Well, it was kind of the opposite with me because I was a Republican and I did not vote for him.
Were you a Goldwater guy?
No.
Okay.
No, but I did not like Kennedy. I had a good friend of mine who was a solid Catholic and tried to convince me that he was the guy to vote for. But after he was assassinated, it kind of made everything turn around because he was then to me a hero. He was somebody that was killed in the line of duty while he was trying to do something for this country. So I could have no hard feelings towards President Kennedy when he was assassinated. And then I became, I don't know, infatuated or what, but I started to collect things, magazines and things that were in his life at one time or another. His book PT 109, which was his book about his wartime efforts, and things about his wife, of course. And so anyhow, that was one of the reasons that I bought the gun at the Klein Sporting Goods store. But then the other thing was every time that something else became known to me about the Kennedys, whether it was in writing, for instance, when the Warren Commission report was done, I have the Warren Commission report. I downloaded it on my computer, so I have the whole. I was going to print it out one time. It's a lot of volumes. It's about 30 volumes or something. But I do have it on my computer, and I have read excerpts through it on the testimony and things that were given. And it's very, very interesting. Yeah.
All right, so let's go back to the Warren Commission and what you found out that was different from your investigation with the rifle.
Well, I try to keep an open mind with all the reports and the investigation they did, but for one thing, they did the testing in the Warren Commission report said that the gun was very, very accurate. And it wasn't very, very accurate because, as a matter of fact, the Italians, when the Americans landed in Italy, they would drop their guns and run away because they couldn't hit anything with it. So consequently, I started to look into that a little bit further, and I don't know how they determined that. In the report, they spell out exactly how they did the testing and so on. But I think that one of the big things was that it had a 4-power scope on it, a Tasco scope, and it was a side mount. And the people that I had fire the gun could not get the thing to fire anywhere near the target. So then, not long after that, I was reading another article that somebody wrote about the Kennedy assassination. They were talking about, since the scope is side-mounted, the regular iron sights, you could look right down the barrel and you could use those. And it was then postulated that that's what Oswald did, that he fired with open sights.
Rather than the scope?
Yes.
Because it was side-mounted?
Yes. So I guess the thing was, I always had a doubt about the scope, because if you fire a rifle with the scope, after you fire it and you work the bolt action, then you got to reacquire the subject in the scope again. And when they were talking about 11.63 seconds for the 3 shots,
short period of time,
that's not going to happen. But if he used the iron sights, the open sights, no problem. He could have done that in that time without any difficulty.
Well, that makes sense. Of course, we have no idea, real reason why. We don't know why he bought the scope. He didn't last long.
Well, the scope came on the gun.
It was okay. But you bought one without the scope.
I did.
But you can buy it without the scope, so he bought it with the scope.
Well, maybe the ad calls for it to have a scope on it.
Right, but there's a without a scope price as well.
Yes, yes.
So maybe just order the standard one that
Yes.
came with the scope.
Yes. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, that makes a bit of sense, but there's 1,000 conspiracies about the Kennedy assassination to this day, and that's interesting. So you've had this thing for 62 years almost.
Yep.
61, almost 62 years.
That's correct.
Wow. And how many times has you been out to get fired? Once, twice?
Probably 3 times.
3 times? Okay.
Yeah, 3 times.
All right. Does it ever make a conversation starter with folks?
Everybody that comes around when they see it, all they want to do is buy it. They want to buy it.
Of course
I'd
they
love
do.
to have it, they say.
Yeah, they probably offer you a lowball price for it too.
Oh yeah. Well, I only paid $19.99 for it.
Yeah, but we'll adjust for inflation. So it's $200 today. I'll give you $205.
Yeah,
you can make a profit. But wow, that's a long time to hold on to it. So if you haven't guessed, I'm going to give it away. Gary is 86 years old. Doesn't look a day over 97, so I thought we'd share that with you guys. Now, actually, to me, it looks like he's in his 70s. But anyway, in fact, we talk quite a bit, especially politics. Gary and I talk politics a lot. And I guess I'm the one getting old because I thought he was 78, when we started talking last year. And he said, no, I'm in the 80s. And I'm like, oh, it must be like 82. And then we were talking, he's 86. So Gary, quite an interesting story with this rifle. And the assassination of Kennedy, as you said, kind of changed your view of him because you see him more as a hero because he died in the line of duty.
Yes.
Well, that's fair. I mean, that's certainly reasonable. And I think that's the experience of many Americans, if not millions of Americans, who might not have liked Kennedy. But when you take out our president, I mean, look at how popular Donald Trump became with people who didn't really like him when they tried to kill him. And they tried to kill him twice that we know about. Yeah. The Butler, Pennsylvania thing, they actually shot him in the head, got him in the ear. And he's a completely different person. Imagine if Kennedy had survived that assassination. Say they hit him in the shoulder or something like that instead of in the head. Imagine he might have been a different president. Not that he was good or bad, but it might have changed the trajectory of where he was going with his presidency.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure of that, but of course we'll never know that. But the time of when Kennedy was assassinated, things were so much. There wasn't the kind of thing like today. Somebody trying to assassinate President Trump, it was big news, but it wasn't like it was something that had never been done. Back when Kennedy was assassinated, there were so many years, I guess went all the way back to Garfield.
Or McKinley.
McKinley, that's what it was. And so it was a big
It just
shock.
didn't happen.
And it happened on TV.
That's right.
And Zapruder had that film of the actual explosion of his head. And it was absolutely, I mean, to wipe. Did you ever see the Zapruder film?
I've seen the film, yeah.
It is just horrendous. And of course, then, not long after that, what happens to Bobby Kennedy? I mean, it's like, it just, everything around that Kennedy family was, and I don't know why things happened to them like they did, but they had a lot of difficulties in their lives within the family. And but they're a very interesting family. I mean, their dad was ambassador to
Ireland?
England.
Oh, was it England?
It
was England. Yeah, it was
yeah,
England.
I think
It was England.
he was a British ambassador. Yeah. And of course, at the time, he was making his money in bootleg booze. And, after you make a lot of money, you become...
important.
Yeah, and you're credible. But then he sent his children to the best schools and so on and so forth. But it was a sad time. Yeah.
I always thought I'm not a big fan of President Kennedy, but then I didn't live through it. I mean, the whole world must have stopped in that moment.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because it's as you said, such a different world. There was no social media. All you had were 3 broadcast networks and the radio stations, and news traveled as quick as that could travel. But now it's completely different. So the world just stopped, I'm sure, at that time in 1963. But I was never a fan of President Kennedy, but I was a fan of Bobby Kennedy. I thought Bobby Kennedy was the better of the Kennedys. He's the guy that really pushed to break the mob, and he's the guy that really pushed for civil rights, and I always had a lot of respect for him. So here we have this legacy today. His son is now the Secretary of Health and Human Services.
Right, absolutely.
All these years later. It's amazing.
And I was all in favor of him. I thought that Donald Trump did a very, very wise thing by bringing him in. And I mean, he showed that he'll go against party lines, whereas the opposition, they don't do that. Absolutely.
Well, he showed that he cares about doing the right thing, not about partisan party politics. So what you got there?
Well, I wish I could put my finger on it quickly here, but I wanted to show you when they did the story on Kennedy, they had pictures of the autopsy, and they showed the pictures
In the paper? Or this is
Yes.
Life magazine?
Yes. I mean, that's amazing to me.
Wow.
And
I'm not going to share that on camera.
And you see, this is where the one bullet came through his back and came out and nicked his tie here. This is where it went in his back and came out through there. That's not the one that killed him, though. That was the one that went in Governor Conley's leg. But and then the third shot's the one that hit his head and exploded.
Wow, that's just crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we wouldn't see something like that today, thankfully. But wow, that's crazy. They actually put that on air.
Yeah.
Now, let's flip that over.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. All right, so Gary, this is the actual rifle, the same model that he used, and you were talking about how he might have used the sights. Can you kind of show us what you think he did?
Well, the interesting thing is, if you look at the rifle and you look at it this way, the mount for the scope is off to the side. Now, all the people that test fired this, said that it had to be shimmed if it was going to be more accurate. So, but the iron sight, you can see, it's quite open. So if that's zeroed in, he didn't need the scope. And I would have to agree with the conversation that people have made about him using the iron sight because of the time frame. But an interesting thing about this scope, when I bought this rifle, it did not have a scope. And I thought to myself, I really should have got one with a scope. But that didn't happen. 50 years later, I happened to see on eBay, this scope is the same manufacturer and from the same company where the one that's on Oswald's rifle. If you look at the picture that's in this Texas School Book Depository, you can see the printing on the scope, and it's identical to this. And so anyhow, he paid $495, I think it was, for the scope on the rifle.
That's not what you paid for it.
I paid $599.
I was going to say. yeah. 50 years later, you missed your chance in 1963 for that one.
His rifle also did not have a bayonet on it. I don't know if he just didn't have it on or what, but this one came with a bayonet, so I had it on there. But this rifle, as you can see, it's a 6.5 Carcano, and they stopped manufacturing the cartridges for this back in 1945 or 46. So all the cartridges that Oswald used were made in the United States by two various companies, and
Now it's a bolt action, so you've got
Yes.
to fire it once and retract the bolt.
yes. In other words, if the first shot is free, I don't want to do that. So the first shot is free to take your time. You don't start the clock work, but once you make the first shot, and then you go like this, and you go back and down and aim, and then up and back and down and aim. All of that in 11.63 seconds.
That's impressive.
So, and then going through the scope, you have to get the eye relief right, see? And when I come up on this thing, it's
You
not
just
easy.
can't do it in 11 seconds.
No, there's no way, because it just takes too long to get it in focus.
I see you've got the sling on there. It looks like the same one.
Same sling that was on Oswald's gun. I bought that later also. I saw that on...
Did you pay $500 for that?
No, that was only $125.
Are you serious?
Yeah, that's what it was.
I'll make you one for 50.
A little piece of leather, I guess.
Yikes.
But anyhow, this was made in. It says it was made in TRI in Italy in 1944. But the serial number is not anywhere close to Oswald's serial number, which was in the 2000s, but this is a BB serial number, and his was a C serial number. But there were thousands and thousands of these guns scattered throughout the United States for sale. So,
Yeah, it's Royal Crown, the Attorney is where it was made in Italy, for the Royal Arms Factory in Terni.
right.
Yeah, the Regia Fabbrica d'Armi di Terni. That's the actual factory of the manufacturer. They stopped making them around 44, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. So anyhow, very interesting rifle, and don't know exactly where it's going to end up at one of these days, but I just, every time I look at it and I look at the bust of Kennedy, and he was just a very unique individual, very brilliant, and I did not agree with a lot of his positions, but that didn't matter, because you know, there's something about when somebody dies, it kind of clears the field, you know what I mean? Anything that they did is history then, and how do you dislike somebody who's not here any longer? I can't do that. So.
All right. Well, Gary, that's a fascinating story. One that goes back longer than I've been alive. I bet you get a lot of that.
I do. I absolutely do.
But 60, almost 60, 63, and we're in 2025. It's, man, it's a long time ago. A long time ago.
Absolutely, yeah.
Does it remain in your memory as if it happened yesterday?
Oh my goodness. I'll never forget the day I was driving from York to Dillsburg, and I was coming up the road, and I was listening to the radio, and it was flashed. President Kennedy has been shot. And it's just like the world stood still, because the way it was reported round the clock for the next, I don't know how many days, and every little detail. Of course, then when they arrested Oswald in the deal with Jack Ruby, I don't know how many people know much about that story, but I mean, on TV, they're bringing Oswald out to transfer him to a prison, and Jack Ruby, who was a nightclub owner, he works his way through the crowd and shoots Oswald. And they worry about the single bullet theory. I have to question if there's anything that didn't make sense to me. Here's the security was so tight in the basement of the Dallas Police Department. And how did this bar owner, this guy that they knew had association ties to crooks, how does he get his way in there that he can assassinate Oswald? So,
well, it's an interesting question, and one that I think some people hope that the release of the Kennedy files would reveal.
Yeah.
If it's in there, I don't know. People are going through 80,000 pages now. I suspect that by now they've scanned it and sent it through artificial intelligence to try to find out if there's anything about Jack Ruby in there. But it does remain, I mean, lots of questions here with the rifle, what Oswald was doing, whether the Soviets are involved, all these claims the CIA was involved. But the one thing that really stands out is who the heck was responsible for security that even let anybody into that room? The press shouldn't even been there.
Absolutely.
Should have been nobody there for prisoner transfer. It's unbelievably irresponsible, and you have to wonder if it wasn't intentional. Not to be conspiracy theorist, but you have to wonder.
Well, they answered that by saying that Jack Ruby was a friend of the police department, the chief of police and so on. And over my years, I come to realize there's a lot of people that own bars that for some reason or another, they like to, sidle up to police because
they're always getting in trouble. They try to look for help.
Yeah. So they want to be friendly with them.
So that's plausible that he was a friend of the police chief.
But the way it was reported the day before he killed Oswald, he was in police headquarters. He was, in the hallways where the other police officer. Why wouldn't somebody say, "What are you doing here?" And then the next day, that evening, I guess it was when he shot Oswald. He walks down into the basement of the garage. They had police up and down the ramp. Security was so tight with FBI agents and Secret Service agents, and he walks right in, and the crowd opens up, and Oswald steps right through and sticks the gun in him. So
That's just crazy. Okay, let's see. So you got the rifle for, you didn't get the scope, so you paid like 12 something for it, $12, $12.74, something like that. So,
No, I had to pay $19.99.
Oh, you did pay
whether I
$19.
got the scope or not.
Okay, so you paid $19.99, which would be $200 today, with inflation. You bought the scope for $500.
$5.99.
Okay, six. Okay, so now we're up to $700 today's dollars. And the sling was
$125.
Okay, so that's what? $825. I'll give you $826 for it.
Anybody out in the audience wants to do any more than that?
Can you top that offer? I'm sure people will probably go out 10,000, 15,000, 20,000. It's probably worth an awful lot to somebody today, which is ironic because the Italians were just trying to get rid of them. They were trying to dump them in the market because they had so many of them, and they proved to be ineffective against Americans at Anzio and other places.
One thing is very interesting that we didn't mention yet, that if you ever get a chance to go to the school book depository.
I have been there.
Have you?
Yes.
When they talk about Oswald, you saw the room he was in with the boxes stacked up against the window there, right? And then when they talk about what Oswald did after he fired the rifle, and he very...
Nonchalantly?
Yeah, nonchalantly moves around, and then he gets down to the next floor down and gets a soda out of the machine, and then he says hi to one of the co-workers, some young woman, I guess, and then he walks out the back door, says goodbye to one of the security guards in there, and then, of course, is his infamous flight, the getting on the bus and then getting off and so on, Well, I'll tell you, it was amazing. The way that whole thing, it just amazes me that it could take place that nonchalantly.
Sure. So casually.
Yeah, casually.
I mean, first off, killing somebody is not an easy thing to do.
No.
Second, such a historic and important figure.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something very few people have done in history.
Yeah.
Even going back in ancient times, even Rome, emperors were assassinated, but it wasn't an everyday occurrence. So quite something. Well, Gary, you've held on to this for a long time. It's an interesting piece of history. Any final thoughts for the audience about this, about acquiring it, about having it, or just about Kennedy? Anything you want to share with the audience?
One of the other things I would mention, though, since you were at the school book depository, what shocked me was when I stood there at that window and looked down at the street.
That's a tough shot.
They come down and they went around the corner, but once he made it around the corner, see, the first shot missed. That hit the street. But once he turned the corner, I mean, he wasn't very far away.
No, he's not. But it was also very short duration, too,
yes.
even at that speed, because it's a very small area. It goes around like in a circle there, and it comes around, and he's got a straight shot down there, but then just go below that and they go underneath. Yeah, so it was, wow, I mean...
So it was like 75 yards or 80 yards to the fatal shot, but it just amazed me how somebody could be sitting there waiting, and then the man comes, and what it must have been like going through his mind, and then when he lines up and pulls the trigger, I mean, that's just something else. So.
Well, there you have it, folks. Gary Reihart purchased that weapon right after Kennedy was assassinated by Oswald. Same model from the same Klein Sporting Goods, which went out of business about 15 or 20 years ago, maybe something like that. They hung around for a long time, based in Chicago, but they're no longer with us. Yeah, it's been a long time, 60 plus years, and there it is. All right, folks, thanks. We'll catch you next time here. I hope that you found this interesting. I know that I was enthralled by the conversation with Gary. And just a reminder that it was before I was born, just so you guys know that. All right.
They should keep saying that. Thank you.
It's all about the love, brother. It's all about the love.
That's true.
All right, Gary, thanks a lot for your time.
All right, thank you.